Welcome to Conversations from the Edge of Consciousness. I'm your host, Kristine Madera. For me, and possibly for you, the inner world of consciousness has always been much more real and way more fun than the so-called real material world. Growing up, I thought I was alone in this, but I'm not. There are a lot of us, and far too many have no one to talk to who shares this experience. I've been lucky to cultivate a community of friends who love to talk about the energies, ideas, and vibrations that are pushing the edges of our own consciousness, as well as our collective consciousness. In Conversations from the Edge, we share our conversations with you. Welcome to Conversations from the Edge. This is your host, Kristine Madera, and we are back today with Jana Roemer. Jana is an astrologer and a yogi and a yoga nidra expert, and she has synthesized 20 years of study and 13 years of teaching from these disciplines to create astro nidras, which is a lying down meditation where the body relaxes to a deep state while your awareness remains online. It's really amazing. And it's a practice of awakening to the multitude of transitions in life and also a cure for the busy mind. We talk with Jana about how astrology works in the archetypes, in the body, and it acts like a life coach if we know how to use it. And she tells us how to use it. So welcome, Jana. It's wonderful to have you back.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've been having so much fun doing these with you.
I know, me too. It really is a lot of fun. So today we're actually talking about Leo, and I've got two brothers in Leo. So, one's in the very beginning of Leo and one's closer to the end. So I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about Leo. So why don't you start us off with what seems like it's the most salient for us?
First of all, Leo season is probably the most fun, loving, romantic, playful, loud season of all of the seasons. And for those of us that are up here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's, even though the summer solstice is at the beginning of Cancer season, this feels like the peak of summer. When we look at Leo season from an elemental perspective, it's fixed fire. And I always like to think of how when you get together with your friends and you stand around a bonfire, the bonfire itself is the focal point. Like the conversation continues around it, the play and the fun continues around it, but everybody kind of gets lost in watching the flames at some point. And a Leo is the bonfire. And when they're in a room, they tend to be the focal point of the room. They love being the center of attention and they love to be around fun. And part of that fun is when you look at a Leo, you often can see it in their features. A lot of Leos or Leo risings tend to have big hair. They tend to have a lot of hair, like they have a mane. Do your brothers have lots of hair?
Well, at different times in their lives, they've had more. My younger brother did have this giant mane. He looked like Jesus for quite a while. When he was a teenager, it was big. And then my older brother has quite a bit of that kind of a mane as well. So yes, I would say yes. And I have some Leo friends, and yeah, they got the hair.
They got the hair. Whenever I see somebody with big hair, I'm always like, you have Leo in your chart somewhere. I know it, like a strong Leo feature in your chart. It's actually interesting. My husband isn't a Leo, but the fifth house is the house that's ruled by Leo, and he has so much hair. He's in his mid 40s and he's got thick hair because of all those planets in the fifth house. Leo season is also, so fixed fire means that it's kind of fixed. So they're a little bit stubborn. Like it kind of has to be Leo's way. They like to be the center of attention. They like to be the leader. We often think of Leo as the lion. And so it's quite a regal time as well, or a regal sign. And so you think of a lion as the king of the jungle. They're the leader of the pack. That's very much a quality of Leo. And you'll see when you really get into it, the time is quite charismatic. If you think of the summer, people are wanting to get outside and they want to play and they want to be social and they want to be with their friends. And people that tend to drink less often have more beer after a hot day, on a hike or, something like that. Like we tend to let loose a little bit in Leo season. but it's also quite an extroverted sign. They can be visionaries. I get the image that's popping in my mind if you watch The Lion King, how he would sit out on the edge of the cliff, like looking over the whole kingdom. And
Mm-hmm.
that is, to me, such a powerful image that goes with Leo season, because at that peak looking out, they're a visionary. They can see way out all around them in all directions, and they're taking in a lot of information through that regal seat. By being the center of attention, they're able to see a lot of what's going on around them. However, with all signs, there's always a shadow side as well as an exalted side. And so the shadow side would be to forget to look out around and make it too much about them. And the exalted side would be to be able to sit in your royal seat, perched up as the king of your castle or the king of the jungle, and be able to see the needs of absolutely everyone. And rather than stealing the spotlight for yourself, to be able to really skillfully share the spotlight and lift others so that everybody has their time to shine. That would be the ultimate expression of Leo.
So it sounds like a Leo would be really good, like as a coach or as in some form where they are coaching people or teaching people, or that kind of a position, or even like a leader of a company.
Yeah, that exactly. If I just got an image of a kids hockey team where the coach is in the middle and all the kids are gathered around, like staring at the coach. So the coach is like the bonfire and all the kids are, standing around the fire. That's a perfect guesstimation of what it is to be a Leo. They do tend to be the heads. They tend to be the people that people look towards. Like, okay, what are they doing? Okay, the people look for cues from Leo leadership. And when they are really in that exalted place, I just want to sprinkle this word in, and that's generosity. And although it may be implied, like if they're able to share the spotlight or give everybody their time to shine, that is generous of them, but it's generous in so many ways. If a Leo, often it's sitting across the zodiac from Aquarius, and Aquarius is the humanitarian, and Leo lives in the spine and the heart in the body. And so if somebody is very centered in themselves, which they would have cultivated in Aries, the first fire sign, cardinal fire. Remember, we talked about that not being self-centered, although some are. To be an exalted Aries is to be centered in oneself, which puts them in the heart or in the spine and delivers them into the Leo. And then as somebody is able to be centered in themselves and in their spine like that, they can then live in their heart and really open their heart. And that's where the radiance of the Leo comes from.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. And this Leo season is really quite interesting because we have 2 Aquarius full moons for this Leo season. And so in Cancer season, I talked about how the Capricorn full moon led the way to then have the Cancer new moon afterwards. This one in Leo season, we have the Aquarius full moon on the 23rd. So the sun moves into Leo on the 22nd. The very next day on the 23rd, we have the first Aquarius full moon. And then the sun moves into Virgo, which is the next sign, which I'll catch you up on in the next podcast, more information about that. But the morning that the sun moves into the sun moves into Virgo later in the day, but that morning we have our second Aquarius full moon, which means the new moons start to lead the way again in Virgo season. When we look at what the Aquarius full moon is teaching us, Aquarius is the time traveler. They don't abide by the rules of time. You could think of Aquarius as somewhat of a quantum leaper. And so what we're really getting schooled on this Leo season is our perception of time and our ability to go back and forth in time and recreate the program. So if our belief system has a story saying something like, super common, like, I'm not good enough, or doubting everything that you're doing, this Leo season, we have an opportunity to travel back in time to our inner child, because Leo is also the inner child, that playfulness, and do some really good inner child healing work and change the narrative, change the story, change the belief that we carry with us that either liberates us or limits us as we go on through our life. So you can imagine right at the beginning of Leo season, we have the first Aquarius full moon, where what actually is happening is it's at the first degree of Aquarius, meaning that it's very close to Pluto. And Pluto is death, transformation, and rebirth. And it helps us to understand our power. And so immediately when Leo season starts, the moon, the first full moon, is quite dramatic, could bring up maybe a bit of obsession, or maybe see a little regression or in our emotionality or our psychology, that then teaches us like, oh, wow, this is what I need to work on. Okay, this little kid inside of me is acting out right now. How do I need to go and nurture myself? And so that's a continuation of the Cancer season. How do I love myself more? How do I tend to myself? How do I love myself back into wholeness? And just when we think we get it, Leo season comes along, spills a whole bunch of drama over our lives, and then really shows you what you got to work on this month. So,
well, and it's right up my alley, because I'm a super Scorpio, so I got Pluto all over the place, and I'm an Aquarius moon. So it sounds like it's going to be a very exciting time for me, because I love all that, death, regeneration, rebirth, transformation stuff. So when you're talking about going and kind of looking back at your inner child, what stage of development, when we correlate this with the stages of development, is Leo?
Great question, because this has been a theme that we've been sharing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I would say this is the teenager, because Leo is the most dramatic, because it's fire, so it's quick. It's not really thinking. I think their intuition is very, very strong, because their intellect isn't getting in the way of taking action. But like, that is such a teenager thing to do, like the fire is burning, I gotta go. They're not thinking, they just jump in. They want to have fun, they want to play. Drama runs high, emotions and hormones are running wild, and we're just, it like Leo isn't about marriage the way Libra is, but Leo is about lovers and romance and excitement. Like, that's so teenager.
Okay.
Who's my crush this week? That's Leo.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting, because for me, that gives me kind of a place to look back to in my life if we're doing all of this time travel work. What do I go back to in time to begin to make some new choices? And that flipping back and forth in time is something I've been talking with other podcast guests about. So if people are listening, you can kind of go back to some of the time podcasts and get a sense of what it means and how to actually shift through time.
We do. I have 2 Aquarius astronidras that will be available on Attuned to the Moon as well, that are 2 different types of time travel. One is to go back in time or forward in time and pray with either a future self, a future expression of yourself, or a younger expression of yourself to come through something. And the other one is recognition that all times are happening right now. And so you could just go to any timeline you ever wanted and do your good work there. So yeah, time traveling. It's amazing how much that is a theme that continues to arise this year.
Well, it is, because when you think about it, I mean, we experience time just because we're physical beings. We're moving in a kind of a linear way through our perception of time. And then some other cultures, do the spiral, but we still all, live from one breath to the next. But, when you get into that more meditative state, you kind of slip into that part of you that's in no time. And that is where you can do all of that amazing time work, is being in that place of no time while you're in time at the same time. Oh,
right. Isn't it amazing? You really have to dive into it, because if you try to understand it with your intellect, it doesn't work. You need to go into the practices and actually experience it.
The intellectual mind, that right or left brain, that it is linear, works in time. And it's that other side of the brain, that right brain, that is attuned to the timeless and the no time. And so you can't left brain your way into right brain. You kind of have to soften the gates between them and let them work together. so that you can play in time, and you can play in no time and different places of time, and then bring them back into your experience in time to let them do their work and heal you. It's so you can't do it just from the one side.
That's exactly right. The way that I understand it is we're looking to create coherence through
Mm-hmm.
first heart coherence, which is so Leo, right? The
Mm-hmm.
heart, to
Yeah.
create coherence in the heart, which then comes into coherence with a coherent brain, so right, left brain hemispheres in
Mm-hmm.
a smooth, coherent pattern, and then start to slow down the hertz or the revs of the brainwave pattern. So a
Mm-hmm.
waking, walking person will be somewhere in a beta brainwave state, which is everything from just eyes open, admiring your world, to high stress. It's quite a large range. And then when you close your eyes and start to slow down the engine,
Mm-hmm.
we move into alpha. And alpha is where, they've done all these actual tests on meditating monks, that it's in the alpha brainwave state where they're able to change the gray matter of their brains to open up greater experiences of compassion and lower
Mm-hmm.
the stress response. And then
Mm-hmm.
they found that when you get on the alpha theta border, that's where you start to get visualizations that aren't your imagination as much as they are something that you're receiving,
Mm-hmm.
like a vision that you're receiving. And when you hit that alpha theta border or dip into theta, we actually start to lose track of time. And for
Mm-hmm.
all the meditators out there, you've got there when, let's say you have a daily 20-minute meditation practice, and some days you close your eyes and the timer goes off and you're like, what? I just closed my eyes. What happened? And you just went in so deep, the brainwave slowed right down, and time all of a sudden isn't a complete illusion. And it can also work on the other end. If your mind stays busy, the 20 minutes can seem like it takes forever.
Mm-hmm.
But when you hit that place where you hit timelessness, that's where you can really travel in these practices. When you're in that timeless place on that alpha theta border, the analyzer turns down, like it's not as active. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're able to go deeper into your own neurochemistry and rewire the neural pathways in your brain so that you can actually see the world through a new lens. And that's how
Mm-hmm.
we do the healing work through this time travel, is we actually change the way electricity moves in our brain, and we change the electrochemical responses to our now environment. Before doing that work, we're just so easily triggered.
We are. And the other thing that turns down when you kind of move into the slower brainwaves is the attachment or the experience of your singular identity, of
Mhm.
you as your collection of conditioning and thoughts and beliefs and all of that. Because in order to do that work in there, like you talk about, the kind of work I do with people like that, is that you can't always have that defended identity online, or you can't make those changes. So softening that, and that helps to open you up to being more at one with other people and other things, and opening up that sense of connection. So it's amazing how much our state of being and our brainwave patterns and our neurotransmitters and all this really do moderate our entire experience, and how much we can actually impact that when we know how to do it. So I'm so glad you put that in your attuned to the moon stuff. So check it out, y'all.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. The time traveler ones are some of our favorites. Obviously well, maybe not obviously, but we have like a tracker, it shows
Mm-hmm.
how many plays each practice has. And the Aquarius ones are some of the most played practices of our whole collection. These time
Oh,
traveler ones,
interesting.
people love them. And we get emails about them all the time. People are like, oh my goodness, I went back and I actually really sat with my inner child, and stories from repair in their own, whatever their childhood trauma stemmed from, whether it's neglect
Mm-hmm.
or abuse. Or sometimes people have things that seem quite trivial, but they have a massive impact on their life. And to be
Mm-hmm.
able to go and sit with themselves at those key moments in time completely change their current reality, which is just incredible. You think about somebody who has doubted themselves their whole life because a caretaker or a teacher told them, made them feel stupid, and to go
Mm-hmm.
back and nurture that little kid inside of yourself, and all of a sudden having a new lease on life where you actually believe that you're capable. that you can
Yep.
achieve things like that. That changes your life.
It
You know?
does.
Yeah.
And it's
And
so much easier than what we've been taught to believe.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. There was one woman that I worked with for a while, and she said, I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on talk therapy. Now, I'm not dissing talk therapy. Talk therapy has its place. And
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that when it happens like this, there's a stream of circumstances, and maybe it's just the thing that turned the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I've spent thousands and thousands on therapy. And in 2 weeks of doing these practices daily, I finally got to where I was trying to be. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've made huge strides, like years of therapy in 2 weeks of really sitting with these slower brainwave patterns and doing that good work. So
Perfect.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So it sounds like it's going to be a really interesting month coming forward if we're beginning and ending with an Aquarius full moon. So what happens this month?
So we have quite a few planetary sign changes, and I actually want to focus on that for Leo season than the
Mm-hmm.
individual aspects, because every time a personal planet changes signs, it affects a part of our personality. And so the day before Leo season begins on July 21st, Venus, which affects our relating, our joy, our pleasure, our prosperity, moves from Leo into Virgo. And this is really interesting because what this tells us is two things. During Cancer season, we got a really nice taste of how relating will go through Leo season.
Mm-hmm.
Yet at the same time, our relating through Venus goes into Virgo, which is actually kind of a tough spot for Venus to be, because Virgo as an archetype, now I'm not dissing all the Virgos out there. I have a
Mm-hmm.
Virgo stellium, but Virgo as an archetype can be very critical. And so I bring this in because it's a good little point of awareness for us during Leo season to not be overcritical of your partners, whether that is a romantic partner, a business partner, creative partner, all your different kinds of relations. Just
Mm-hmm.
watch. Are you being overcritical? Are you paying too much attention to the details and not enough attention to the fun? And we want to try to stay in the fun, even though Venus in Virgo might ignite that critic, and that critic might go on yourself or it might go towards your relation. So that's one thing to just have as a reminder during Leo season this year.
Okay.
And then, like I said, we have the full moon. And then on the 27th, we have Mercury moves into Leo. So
Mm-hmm.
that makes Leo that our communication and our mind gets on board with all of the Leo things we talked about before. Now, it's also important to remember that it's super common for Mercury and the sun to be in the same sign. This Mercury is only ever 28 degrees away from the sun. So it's either in the same sign or the sign before or the sign afterwards. But when they are in the same sign, it's really important that you walk your talk.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because our radiance or our heart or what we're doing speaks louder than the words that we say, because the Mercury, as it gets closer to the sun, is blinded by the sun. So our actions speak louder than our words. And at the same time, our ego can really mess us up. So watching that. But at the same time, this can just help make summer fun, and depending on where you are in the world, this year, I expect Leo season to be a little bit more outrageous than normal, a little bit more dramatic than normal, because most places have just come out of lockdown and,
Mm-hmm.
we're finally being able to travel and see people and do things and gather. And I haven't been keeping up as much what's going on in the US because you guys opened up before us here. But in Canada, on July 1st was the beginning of being able to gather again and take our masks off again. And July 1st is 3 weeks before Leo season begins, but
Mm-hmm.
I just see it the beginning, with anything, you start a new relationship or you start something new, there's like a flirting period. And I feel like Cancer season was a little bit of that flirting period, a little bit emotional, a little bit like socially awkward, not quite knowing, wait, do I go out? Do I not go out? Do I wear a mask? Do I not wear my mask? And by the time we get to Leo season, you've kind of found your stride with it, and people are, I don't know, I think maybe blowing off a little bit of steam.
Yeah, we opened up war in to June, and then because July 4th was our Independence Day, and I think, so we had some time before that for people to kind of acclimate to whatever that happened to be for them. But there was a lot going on, like, with people gathering and being together on the 4th of July. So that was kind of our coming out party, I suppose. But I'm sure, things just continue to get more interesting throughout the summer.
I think so. And I think by the time we get to Leo season, if there's any precautions that need to be taken again, we'll start to see them by the end of August.
Okay.
And which actually leads me to the next one, is that Jupiter, which is retrograde, shifts from Pisces back into Aquarius on July 28th. Now, this one's really interesting to me because when Jupiter went into Aquarius before, that's when all the lockdown stuff started to get more strict. And then as Jupiter moved into Pisces, that's when the conversation of more freedom began. And it's interesting because Aquarius is often associated with freedom, but we also have Saturn in Aquarius right now, which is boundaries and constrictions. And so I have no idea what this Jupiter back into Aquarius is going to bring, but it's there from July 28th all the way to December 28th. And my feeling is that we're getting a chance to have a redo because it's a retrograde. We're getting a chance to have a redo on what happened when Jupiter was in Aquarius the first time, because Jupiter usually doesn't move as fast as it did all the way through Aquarius, like all the way from 0 degrees to 30 degrees. Jupiter just like all full steam ahead got through Aquarius as fast as possible.
Okay, and when was this? Remind me.
It started in December, just before the winter solstice, so just before Christmas. And it was there until May, I think, either the 14th or the 15th, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And so then it was May, June, and most of July, half of May, all of June, and most of July in Pisces.
Then we go back.
And then we go back on July 28th into Aquarius. So I think what it is, because Jupiter and Aquarius is freedom, and Jupiter is to expand freedom. And so I hope, I hope that we get a redo on the freedom that Aquarius really wants to give us with Jupiter in there. So we'll see. Who knows? We'll see. It'll be interesting anyways.
Yes, it will. We will roll with it, whatever it happens to be, hopefully.
Yeah. And then we have on the 29th, the very next day. See, we haven't even made it out of July yet. And we have already all these planets changing signs. So then we have Mars moving into Virgo, joining Venus in Virgo. And so I could see this turning into like a critique of the last year, or the last more than a year, 15, 16 months. I could see it turning into quite a critique on what is going on, because like I said, that Virgo archetype is very critical. But here's where it's key to understand. It's critical for the sake of healing. Okay. And with Mars, it's like our passion, our purpose, our drive. It's like how we penetrate life. And it's going to be going through Virgo. And so it could help us it could do two things. It could create a further divide as we get more critical of the people across the battlegrounds from us. Or if we move more into a critique and actually develop our discernment during this time. And Virgo, everything has highs and lows, right? So Virgo in its lower expression, in the expression that needs a little bit of work, it moves into perfectionism, and you can drive yourself crazy. When it's in its more exalted expression, it's wholeness. And to me, this is like, this actually gives me hope. Some astrologers are saying, oh goodness, watch out. And I'm like, hey, why do we always got to catastrophize everything? Like, what if this was to offer a critique. Okay, look at what we did. We did lockdown. We rolled out this vaccine. We've had all these things go on, and this is what's happened. Now new information is still coming to the center. Virgo is the healer, which we'll get into more in the next podcast as well. But to be able to critique our work and say, wait, okay, let's rewind this program. Let's move forward on this program. Let's have another look at this program. Like maybe there's other ways that we could be treating things, or there's other ways we could relate to our neighbors, or there's another perspective that we could take on racism or the healing of it, or there's you know what I mean? Like we can, so many topics have come up in the last 15 months. It's crazy. Like it's insane. I don't think in our lifetimes we've blown up as many areas of our lives as we have.
No,
and to
all
take
at
just
the
a
same
pause.
time. Yeah.
Right. And so to take a pause and be like, wow, okay, now we've seen the mess. How are we going to bring it back into wholeness?
Yeah.
But you never know. You never know. Humans are unpredictable.
They are. And I think one of the things that we need to focus on when it comes to wholeness is that, in order for us to have a wholeness experience in the world, we need to have a wholeness experience within ourselves. And so remembering that pointing to somebody else and saying that they're the problem getting in the way of your wholeness is really not the problem. It's coming back into self-reflecting and looking at where am I not being whole within myself, or where am I denying parts of myself? Where am I unintegrated? Where am I ignoring these different aspects of self? Just like with the time, we've got linear time and we've got no time, and they're both part of the picture. And so until you are able to integrate your experience with that, rather than it being one or the other, but to be able to be in that state of wholeness where you're more experiencing linear time and in one kind of experience, and then you're more in a wholeness in the other kind of experience, but you're kind of camped out in the middle, so that you can move back and forth and experience whatever is the best in the moment. Like that's kind of a template for wholeness of moving away from our own inner either or and moving to our own both and accepting all of ourselves, even as we're a work in progress. Because until we can accept ourselves and open to our own wholeness, we're not going to be able to recognize and experience and honor those parts of our collective that are moving in that way as well.
I think you nailed it fully there. The Leo might tend to have us pointing fingers, and then the Virgo season might have us taking it indoors, inside.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'll see a progression, because don't you think that's what a lot of people do as well? Like, first of all, we're like stuck in time, like linear time. And then there's a moment where we get free of that. I think also in relationship, it's easier to be like, you're the problem. You're you. And then all of a sudden there's that moment of shock where you're like, oh, it's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that will be a natural progression over this.
And everybody's had their lives so disrupted. It's much more easy to see things that were invisible before. So yes. I think I'm hoping that instead of going back to, because it's all this, we need to go back to what was familiar, but hopefully we can not go back to those old familiar patterns of blindness, of inner blindness, and can, step out and say, I had been in this pattern for a real long time and I didn't realize it wasn't working for me, but now I see that it's not, and what else is possible for me.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have the new moon on the 8th of August. And the new moon in Leo. So we have all those planets in Virgo. We have the new moon and the sun in Leo. We have the new moon is square Uranus, which I think the new moon is the point of awakening, because that square with Uranus is that moment of like that I was just talking about, where you realize, oh, I've got one finger pointing outward, but I've got three pointing back at myself. That awakening of like, oh, this is for me to do the work on myself. And then we have someone who we haven't been talking so much in the zodiac is Neptune, is across from Venus on, well, not exact, but I would call it pretty close on that new moon. And so that is so Neptune is all about our subconscious mind, and it moves into the domain of our psychic abilities. Yet at the same time, it puts layers between us and reality and can put us in a state of delusion. And so that Venus work that I was talking about earlier is sitting opposite Neptune. So we have this separation from the illusion just for a moment. It's like at this moon, with the squaring of the moon to Uranus, and then Venus sitting opposite Neptune, there's this little opening where it's like we either get a break from the illusion, or we get this little opening for a greater understanding where that awakening can come in, because Uranus rules Kundalini energy. And so there's this opportunity for, I just think that's a really powerful little portal in this whole Leo season. And then Mercury's moving so fast, because remember I talked about how Mercury moves into Venus Mercury moves into Leo right at the beginning on the 27th. It already on the 11th moves into Virgo. So it's moving so fast. 2 weeks, that's it. And then so Mercury joins Virgo. And then on the 15th, Venus already moves into Libra. And so Venus in Libra is trying to get us right in our relations. So we have this little journey where it's like, point the finger. Oh crap, it's me. Oh, what am I going to do? Okay, awakening moment. And then the relations come back in. Venus goes back into its own sign in Libra, and we have a coming back together, which, I mean, we need that. We need that so much.
One of the things we touched on in, I think it was our last podcast, is that a lot of these things are like these roller coasters that roll through your body, these energies that roll through you and that kind of direct you, and you ride along with them. But if you know that it's coming up, then you can kind of ride the wave instead of being pummeled by the wave and thinking that what you're experiencing and all of these like, oh, crap moments, so it's you, it's me, all of that is actually a kind of truth, that it is really the experience of the energy flowing through you and the opportunity to recognize what that is, rather than really being in that reactive zone with that energy and using it as a way to interact with other people in a not so helpful way. So it's always good to keep those like red letter some weeks that you need to just kind of stay on your sort of chill scenario, whatever you chill out with.
Yes. And you know what the astrology constantly reminds me is that those moments when we're pointing the finger at somebody else, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. They're part of the process. So it's not where we want to stay, but they're not wrong. Oftentimes, it's necessary for us to step out of line before we step back into line. Like it's necessary for us to go imbalance before we come back into balance. It's necessary for us to forget ourselves so that we can remember ourselves. And so I find in the spiritual world, a lot of times people are like, they take the work home all the time. They're like, oh, it's me. I got to do the work. I got to stay in the process. I have to, that mirror, it's just a mirror. And yes, all of that is true. And sometimes we got to have a temper tantrum, and sometimes we got to point the finger, and sometimes, like getting in an argument with a partner and saying you have to change initiates, hopefully, if you're in a loving partnership, initiates a conversation where the other person can offer another perspective that then helps us to see ourselves in it and both grow from it. And so that initiation or that blame or that pointing the finger is oftentimes a precursor to a deeper understanding or a greater trust or a level up of respect that's to come as we come through it together. But that moment of conflict or tension is necessary to initiate the conversation that will get us there. And so they're not wrong. It's part of the process.
But it is, it is also the process of, because I come across people who do half of the process. They point the finger and then they stay in that for like 20 years. But you're absolutely right. It's a catalyst for awareness and shifting. But if you stay in that reactive place, it's not doing you or anybody else any good.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's not wrong, just like blaming yourself isn't wrong. Or coming home to yourself and saying, oh, wait a minute, Jana, you can do better. Yeah. Come on. Your 12-year-old is acting out right now.
Yeah. And having that self-reflection to be able to say, and look at that and say, wow, okay, what could I do differently? Or what is it that I'm not so excited about in myself that I want to change? But I still like knowing what the energies are coming up so I can watch them and ride with them rather than react with them, because that never
Yeah.
works out well.
And
All
then on
right,
the
so
night,
what's next?
yeah, on the 19th, we have the planet Uranus, which I just mentioned briefly before,
Mm-hmm.
stations retrograde. Now, Uranus is one of those outer planets that spends time retrograde often. And we don't really talk about it so much because it's the deep, slow work that's happening underground. Except for with Uranus, it is discontinuous energy, where Pluto or Neptune, it's like a slow build, or it's a
Mm-hmm.
slow, consistent plowing of the soil underneath, where Uranus is like, it's lightning, right?
Oh.
It's lightning, or it's earthquakes when it's in Taurus. And I'm not saying that like we're going to have lightning and earthquakes as a metaphor to understand how the energy moves. So
Mm-hmm.
everything's copacetic, everything's good. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, something changes. You get an insight, you get a flash of light, you get a flash of, or like a movement of your inner tectonic plates. And all of a sudden you realize like, wow, I got to change course. And
Mm-hmm.
so when it's around the stationing degree, so I would give it, I didn't actually look up how long it's there, but with Uranus, I would give it like a week on either side, which means we can say the last whole entire week of Leo season and the first week of Virgo season. Be ready for some insights. Be ready for course redirection. Be
Okay.
ready for, all of a sudden you're just like, whoa, I was heading that way. Now I got to go this way. Oh my goodness, I understand why my business wasn't working out. I need to do this, you know? And when we look at Leo as an archetype, we have to remember when you look at animals in the wild, they're not
Mm-hmm.
always working. They
Yes.
work the minimal amount to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
They don't overwork themselves because that puts them in jeopardy, right? It puts
Mm-hmm.
them in danger. It puts them in a
Yes.
depleted state. I love like watching, forget about a lion in the jungle. Look at a house cat. A house cat sits in the sun in the windowsill. It like purrs and it lounges and it sleeps, it rests, it rests, it rests. And then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden it sees the laser flashing and then it's off and it's gone, and then it needs food and it goes and hunts if you live on an acreage or something, but
Uh-huh.
it saves its energy, it conserves its energy. And I feel like that's kind of a parting piece of advice for this Leo season is to rest,
Yeah.
rest, because really we have 5 planets retrograde
Mm-hmm.
in actually 6 if you count Chiron, which is a asteroid, retrograde, which means we're meant to look inward.
Mm-hmm.
We're meant to self-reflect. And I've been calling this summer the most introverted, extroverted summer on record. And so be like that lion that rests under the shady tree, or be like that house cat that rests in the sunlight through the window, and
Mm-hmm.
give yourself the time to integrate, because the most important work that we do over the entire summer season, so I'm talking Cancer season, Leo season, and Virgo season, is we allow our conscious awareness, our perception of self, to catch up to the reality that we have just birthed through this pandemic. Because everything
Wow.
has changed. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
everybody experienced disruption in some way. And now we have
Yeah.
to catch up to that. We need to reformulate our reality based off these changes.
Yes.
So,
And I
yeah,
want
let
to
yourself
add a little
rest.
bit to, you talked about the cat, which I love because that's true. But also when they've done studies of our early ancestor type of societies, so we still have some of them around the earth, and so they look at them to see what their lifestyle was like. And the hunter-gatherer societies worked about 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time they hung out, they laughed, they played, they did other things. They were in community, but
Mm-hmm.
they didn't work as far as hunting and gathering more than about 4 hours a day. Sometimes, more in intensive times when they were gathering more things or something, but not They didn't work like we do. And I don't know about Canada, but in the US, like it's a badge of honor, or it's a waning badge of honor to work like 60 hours a week. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think is one of the things that's really up for change. And so even recognizing that human beings initially did not work these crazy hours, it doesn't require this intensity. And that there is a nice happy medium where we can work and we can play and we can integrate and we can have a life and a whole life, not just a working life.
Yeah, that's what Leo season wants us to do.
All
Like,
right.
say no to grind culture. Say yes to leisure life. say
I
life
love
to
that.
say yes to family. Say yes to friends. Say yes to
Uh-huh.
bonfires. Say yes to getting outside. Say yes to really nurturing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
I think if there is one thing that we learned through this pandemic is, I mean, not everybody did, but if we could learn that we don't need to work so hard to
Yeah.
make things happen, we just
Yeah.
need to listen. Like,
Yes.
we need to listen. We need to listen and align with purpose. And Leo is saying, get in your heart,
Mm-hmm.
listen to your heart, center yourself within yourself, catch up to where you are, or catch up to your heart's desires, and
Mm-hmm.
let everything that's not that go.
Amen. And then we end Leo season with another Aquarius full moon.
Well, the second full moon is actually at the final degree of Aquarius.
Uh-huh.
And so when we have a moon at the final degree of a sign, or I should say, not just the moon, when we have any planet at the final degree of a sign, what we're doing is experiencing the mastery of that archetype. So, the mastery of that archetype. Now, 29 degrees of Aquarius is pretty spectacular when you think about where we are in the world right now. Um, the Aquarius archetype wants to take care of humanity. And
Mm-hmm.
this full moon is illuminating this, not just a desire to take care of humanity, but the need, like we need to take care of humanity right now. And we get this final degree, this 29 degree. It's almost even, the end of the 29th degree. It's all integration. It's all synthesis. It's putting it all together. It's creative intelligence at its best. It's having a vision that is so crystal clear that you're actually free from everything that's not that vision.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ability to see that big picture so clearly that the suffering diminishes.
If you look at all of what COVID has brought us from the disruption and all of this kind of stuff, that is sort of the lesson from the exalted COVID that it's inviting us to step into. That we are humanity. We're not just individual humans. We are individual humans that make up humanity, and we need to take care of all of us
Yeah.
in an equitable way for all of us to thrive. Because if we're in some people thriving and some people not thriving, ultimately, like in a body, if part of your body is thriving and part of your body isn't, ultimately, that part that isn't is going to take over the whole body and nothing will thrive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at the new moon exact, although it's not a perfect trine, we have an earth trine between, I don't even know if you could actually call it a trine, to be honest, because it's 10 degrees and it's Pluto in Aquarius, and then Mercury and Mars are together in Virgo. Pluto is in Capricorn, and Uranus is in Taurus. But these are all, it's like the two personal planets in Virgo and then the two generational planets in Capricorn and Taurus, all earth signs. It's actually pointing to now is the time to create the world that we want to live in. Like, look into your
Beautiful.
future and bring it into this moment right now. If you want to be in right relation, be in right relation now. I selfishly look at my own life. I want to keep working online the way that I have. I want to keep having the flexibility that I have. I'm not going to be going back to an office. That's not what I want to do. I'm very hopeful that I will be able to continue on, still evolving, but continue on in this more centered lifestyle, you know, and not self-centered,
Right.
centered,
Right. Centered.
right? And so we just keep doing that. We take another step toward the future by making it real right now. All those earth signs are saying, let the ethereal become material. Let the idea become reality. Let the dream become the reality. And so, like, I don't know. I just think that final moon has a streak of freedom, a hope for togetherness. And Jupiter is also pretty close to conjunct the moon. So whatever we're illuminating at that full moon is going to expand. So on the 22nd of August, and I would even give it a little bit more space, like the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, be very intentional with not your intention, be intentional with your action. The intentions were set on the new moon. It's the action that matters on the full moon.
Well, that is a perfect place to finish up this conversation and set us up for our Virgo conversation, which I'm also looking forward to. So that will be very exciting. And it sounds like, if you haven't already done so, getting into attune to the moon and really taking advantage of the meditations and the yoga nidras in there is the perfect thing to do. So you can find that information in the show notes and on the Conversations from the Edge website. There's a 50% off coupon code you can use. And you can also find all of Jana's contact information, social media, and all of that good stuff there as well. So thank you, Jana. This has been really a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. And you know, it's surprising. I didn't realize this would be the case, but in the website, in the membership, we do a lot of the astro nidras, but I also have somebody in there that's doing dream work, and she has these shorter meditations that you do lying in bed at night before you go to bed. They are the most popular thing on the whole entire website. People are going bonkers for these dream meditations. The idea is to help people sleep better, first of all, but also to awaken inside of their dreams, to remember their dreams and to do some dream work. And the woman who's doing it, her name is Sasha, she has just been blowing our minds. She started, she's got like a dream course on the website, as well as these easy meditations that are just included in the membership. And people are loving them. We love getting these emails from people saying, I, first of all, have been sleeping like a baby. And second of all, I am remembering my dreams, and I've learned how to go to bed with a question and wake up with more clarity. And so where everybody's sleeping anyways, it's not like you have to add another thing to the time that you have to do things. You just hit play as you go to bed, and it sends you off in the dream space with intention for your dreaming. And, you know, that I think is the place where we all go unconscious. You know, the majority of people are just like, time for bed. And then you wake up and we're not doing anything there. And to make that part of your spiritual practice, people are going nuts for this. I love it. I'm like, okay, Sash, we need more stuff from you. People are loving your work. So if you are interested, just to let you know, that's also part of the offering there. I had no idea that it would be as popular as it is.
Excellent. All right, well, check that out. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is your host, Kristine Madera. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation from the edge of consciousness. You can find all our conversations at conversationsfromtheedge.net. You'll also find links to schedule a private conversation with me or any of my friends, as well as tools to help you expand your own consciousness and explore what's possible for you outside the boundaries of your current perceptions. Feel free to use this podcast to start your own conversation by sharing it with friends, on social media, in your blog, or even in your own podcast. And as always, live the adventure of pushing your own edge. It's the most amazing adventure there is.